And we're good.
Very good. Good afternoon. It is 1:30 and I will call the, what day is it? May 13th, 2024, meeting of the Distressed Unit Appeal Board to order. Would like to note that the meeting and along with all the required notices being held and were posted in accordance with the open door law. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the April 11th meeting. They were previously distributed in your material. Are there any clarifications or corrections needed for the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting minutes are adopted. We'll move into our public comment section. Maybe we'll take the first online here is Christy Sass. Would you like to speak today? Christy, can you hear us?
Now I can. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, no?
Christy, would you like to speak today?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
We cannot hear you.
Darn it. Okay.
Let's see if it's me. Can you try again, Mrs. Sass?
Yeah, hello?
Okay,
Hello?
just,
Mute.
just one second.
Here,
right?
bear with us, please.
All right, can you try one more time, please?
Mute. Hello? Oh,
So I've got you turned up pretty loud, so if you want to go ahead and we'll do our best to hear you.
can you hear
Please
me?
proceed.
Can you hear me
We-
now?
We can.
You can? Give me a thumbs up.
Well, we've got you through, my computer, so the folks in the room can hear you. I'm not sure the folks outside can, but you feel free to go ahead.
Okay, my comment is I'm concerned about the school board picking the superintendent. Their goal was to pick one by the end of April. The last meeting the school board had was April 10th. They canceled their April 24th meeting. It's now like May 13th. They're supposed to have a meeting tomorrow. But if they announce someone they've picked tomorrow, how the heck did they do that? Because they didn't meet since April 10th. And I was under the impression with the open door law that even if they were having private meetings, they had to post that they were having the meetings. So that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. Mrs. Tyndall, would you like to speak?
I would.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you. I understand that manager raising. As you know, I was on the premises, so near the premises. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mrs. Lavetta Tyndall of Gary, Indiana. I am a 1966 graduate of the great and wonderful Roosevelt High School. And I'd like to say today that it seems that DUAB, UGT, and others associated with these two groups have brought a new meaning to the words great and leadership. Also, such words as teamwork, transparency, integrity, open communication. If you get a chance, please refer to great schools in your computer system on the website. And I think you'll find it interesting. The listing that's there indicates that schools with very low scores in reading and math are considered great schools. And that's according to the information that's been submitted by Westside Leadership, quote unquote, Leadership Academy. I'd like to pass information out. If you'll pass it along, please, I'd appreciate it. I'd like for these to be reminders to you of the lineage of the majority of those that you are paid to serve. The DUAB as well as the administration of the Gary Community School Corporation. We have concerns, we being members of our city, our citizens, our parents, and concerned citizens were under the impression that the superintendent of our school system the search was going to begin in January of 2024. And that search did not begin until March. Here we are, May 13th. And we still haven't gotten word regarding the superintendent, nor the finalization of the search. We, as a community, have not been openly and readily engaged in the process. And that is something that causes concern. It's another indication of exclusivity, excluding us from the system, from the way that our system is run. And we don't know yet where we stand regarding the superintendent for our schools. And here we are nearing July 1, when our transition period is supposed to, July 1 is when we're supposed to begin our authority over our schools. Thank you much.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Okay. And I'll just do an open call. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our academic and financial update. We'll kick things off with the academic updates.
So while Pete's pulling up the slides, I'll say this is a pretty short update. We're in the thick of testing. I learned just kind of grab. We're doing makeups, about to do iRead retests. So a lot of testing is happening, but we're not yet ready to share the results. So pretty quick update today.
Sorry, a lot of 3D slides. There we go.
So want to share the data that we've been kind of sharing every month to give you an update on some of the culture and climate factors in our schools. So first we've got attendance. This slide is attendance at our secondary schools. As you can see, April was up at GMS and Bailey, which is great. Now I'll say part of that is testing. We really make a big push to get kids in so that we can get them all tested. And I think you can see the impact there, holding kind of steady at Westside. On the next slide in your packets, you can see the elementary attendance. And similarly, it's up or steady in most schools. There's a couple that went down a point or two, but overall district-wide averages are up with attendance, which is great. We've also just been putting some more attendance infrastructure into place. We're also really thinking a lot about how we can bolster our attendance policies and practices next year, both the making sure we are fully executing and supporting our parents through the legal side of truancy, but also doing the work of trying to remove barriers and bring kids back to school and address some of those root cause issues, which is much more individualized work. But we have hired someone for the central office to lead the team that's working with at-risk populations. Truancy will fall under that person, and I think that having some senior strategy specifically on this problem, as well as some of our alternative programming, I think will be really helpful heading into next year. We currently have one truancy officer for the district. We're going to create an elementary and a secondary position so that they can focus a little bit more. The challenges are also a bit different at the elementary versus the secondary level. Elementary is much more about families getting their kids to school, whereas for high school kids, they have control of their own attendance more often. Of course, the two bleed together and behavior plays a role and other risk factors, but the interventions look a little bit different because you're dealing either directly with the parent versus the student. So really looking at how we can make a stronger push next year and build up the district's infrastructure around truancy. Next slide is the suspension data. You'll see again, not nearly as high as it has been in the past, a little higher than March. I think we can also attribute some of this to testing because when there are student disruptions and behavior issues happening during testing, we have to take it very seriously because we have to keep that testing environment. And honestly, kids get a little restless as the weather gets warm and they are having to take quite a few tests kind of in a row. So that's what I would attribute some of the increase, but as you see, it's not nearly up to where it was earlier in the year, which is great. At the elementary, same, very few suspensions in our elementary schools this past month. Glen Park is the highest, but they also have the highest enrollment by quite a wide margin. And then the only other piece I wanted to share today, since we're in the window in between IREAD spring administration and the summer retest, just wanted to speak a little bit to what we're doing with that and what we're looking ahead to. So we are planning to retest students at the end of the school year. There are a number of community-based summer school organizations and initiatives happening that kind of preclude us from doing the type of targeted intervention and retesting over the summer that we would normally do. But transparently, it's also difficult to get the students that we really want in for summer school to do the IREAD retest. So we've had more success in the past doing it before they leave in the spring anyway, because then we can really do interventions while we have them in the building, get them testing in the right conditions while we have them, instead of kind of hoping that they'll come back for summer school consistently. So that is the plan. We've had a number of interventions going on for those students who did not pass. We've kind of used the IREAD data as well as other data that we have available and teacher knowledge to group them based on what they're lacking, whether that's decoding skills or comprehension. And then we're doing some targeted pullouts for those kids. They're getting additional tutoring through Latera, which I've spoken about before. And we've designed at various schools, really lessons that are very designed to match up with what IREAD looks like. IREAD as a test did change a little bit this year. The structure of it changed. Previously a teacher would read aloud the text and it's automated. And so also just like getting our kids used to that a little bit. They've got to, replay if they want to hear it again, which can be very helpful. So there's some little tweaks to the test that we actually weren't really sure what they were going to look like until we did the spring administration. So just making sure we're really preparing kids well, and they'll start retesting next week for the last 2 weeks of the year. And then heading into next year, we're going to do a few things to continue the push on literacy. And so I've been working with some of the folks that will be taking over a lot of what I've been doing and stepping into curriculum and instruction roles. And so we are working together to do a literacy institute in June, the second week of June, to really dig in on science of reading, what it looks like, how they're kind of can better leverage resources. It will be an optional PD, of course, because it's in June, but we will be able to stipend the teachers for their time. So we're hoping we'll get a pretty good turnout for that. And that'll be a valuable time for professional development when they're not in their buildings. We engaged in a UFly pilot this year. IDOE shared UFly, which is a phonics curriculum. And because it came mid-year, we asked teachers to do an opt-in pilot, and the ones who did found a lot of really good success. It's been really wonderful, and it's a low-cost curriculum, so it's only $70 per classroom. So it's a good sustainable option for the district to scale up. So we're going to go ahead and scale up in core instruction K3, and then use it in intervention 4 through 8, actually, hoping that the number of kids in that type of phonics intervention goes down significantly as we head towards 8th grade, but we know that we do have some kids who need it. We're creating some new literacy coaching positions. We're in the IDOE STEM, or not STEM, literacy cadre for our elementary schools. Those coaches can only work with teachers in kinder through 3rd grade. So we're hiring a district-wide coach for that 4th and 5th grade band to make sure that those teachers have support, because it's not embedded in their day-to-day curriculum in the same way that it is in the early grades. So having that kind of guidance will be really helpful. And then we're also going to have a coach specifically focused on literacy for the middle schools so that they can help with those interventions as well. And then of course, just continuing throughout next year, and we're starting to set up that calendar now, just providing frequent trainings focused on the science of reading and making sure we're getting everybody there. I think our K3 teachers have a pretty good grasp, but 4 and up, much less so. So we really want to hit that next wave. And we've set up the calendar for next year to have a lot more time for professional development and quality professional development. So we're working to build out that calendar now, like I said, with the folks who will succeed in this role. Questions?
Any questions from Davis? Representative Smith?
Yeah, I want to go first to your student attendance. Are you doing any analysis of the causes for absenteeism, whether it's staying home to supervise younger children, whether it's not getting them in time because you don't have a alarm clock, or all the reasons?
I think with our current amount of infrastructure that we have, we're not collecting great kind of, okay, you came back from timeout, let me mark down kind of why you were absent. We have anecdotal for sure that we talk about from our FACE liaisons who do a lot of the interfacing with parents in situations of truancy. So it's a lot of what you expect. I do think as we add some more people into the truancy office next year, starting to collect that data and narrow down what some of those root causes are, our FACE team does work with parents one-on-one and kind of try to talk about like what's really going on. Can we help you find childcare? Can we connect you with some supports that would allow for your students to come to school?
Okay, but what if you just monitor the notes that's sent in? I think if you want to cure a problem, you gotta be methodical and intentionally. And if you're just saying this is a goal and you're not working to increase the numbers and eliminate the problems, you're not gonna make the growth that you want to make.
We only get notes for excused absences, and these are unexcused absences.
Okay, so they're unexcused absences. That's more of a reason for you to find out why.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the students are coming back without notes,
Mhm.
and there's no follow-up to find out.
No, there is follow-up, yes, we reach out to the families. I would say our FACE liaisons do a lot of that work, and then we have one truancy director who does a lot of the kind of notification and liaising with parents. But yeah.
I know you're on the way out, but I think that you can leave something in the structure, because the 20 years I had at principal, we worked on attendance, because if they're not there, we can't teach them. And that's why we bought alarm clocks. That's why we bought face cloths and toothbrushes and all that kind of stuff, so that the kids who come to school, don't do that, just come here, just be on time, get here, and we'll do the rest of it. I'm just suggesting that you might want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I wanted to look at, why beverage has so many more expulsions or suspended rather than the other one.
Yeah, beverage, as I'm sure you know, has long been one of our most troubled elementary schools. I think the student population has, from that neighborhood, tends to skew more social emotional challenges, more trauma. So we have always, I think, seen higher discipline rates at beverage. It's not one of our biggest schools, so we're looking at raw numbers here, right? But proportionally, it has been a challenge this year. It's complicated. There've been a lot of teacher absences, which there's more incidents of behavior when we have substitutes. So just that staffing piece has been difficult. Sometimes things spiral, right? Like kids kind of get into it with each other, and then their friends get involved. And so once something kind of starts to emerge, it can snowball. And I think we saw that in the spring in beverage. So It is starting to go down, which is good, but it has been a challenge this year.
I'm just wondering, is it being used as a first resource rather than the ultimate, the final resource? Because if you put Rob Reverend out in the broad patch where he wants to be in the first place, all you're doing is, adding to the problem rather than solving it. I think there ought to be some efforts to look at alternative ways of dealing with that population rather than stigmatizing.
Absolutely.
And then on your literacy update, I was wondering, why are you doing this in June right after teachers get out? It'd make more sense to do this right before they come in, so it's fresh in your minds.
Yeah.
Because if the teachers go on vacation too, then your minds.
Yeah, we have professional development queued up for both June, right after they get out, and late July, early August, right before they start. So we have a couple of things set up for both of those time windows. There's not as much, it's hard to plan for that July window because of the superintendent uncertainty. So really the only good week, which we had thought about late July, was our first choice, but it would be the first week that administrators come back from vacation, and then there will be a new superintendent who may want to do a retreat or something to get to know the administrators. So we didn't want to plan a whole.
Can I get a little bit off course because you mentioned the new superintendent? I've been getting calls from teachers who've indicated that, and it could be just a rumor, I don't know, because I haven't done an investigation. I just told them I'm going to ask the question here. They're indicating that their principals have told them that they won't be back next year. They've been promoted to positions at the central office. And I'm just wondering why, if that's the case, why are you making promotions before the new superintendent comes?
We've talked about this a lot. We really wanted to hold off on as many positions as we could, but because of the time of year we're at, if, central office positions, naturally, some of them will get filled by principals, because that's the next, step in a normal career trajectory. And if we knew that we had a few roles that principals were likely to apply for, and if we held off, then we wouldn't be able to staff the schools, and we would hit July without our schools fully staffed. So we did try to wait as long as we could until the new leader. Mike, I don't know if you want to say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But are you giving these people contracts or you're making an interim? They said they will be coming there in the fall, according to the messages that I've been getting.
They're getting contracts.
Okay, then you're tying that person in for 2 or 3 years and the new superintendent has to abide by that because the person has a contract, you gotta live with the contract. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair what you're doing. I don't think it's wise what you're doing.
Like Ms. Nelson said, we tried to hold as long as possible. We didn't want to negatively impact the schools.
Okay, but where'd you get all these vacancies from? I know 3 people that they've mentioned. Where'd you get all these vacancies that you haven't filled all this period of time? It makes the community feel suspect, like you're trying to put some people that you want to reward in place for 2 or 3 years. There's no trust in you in the first place. And then when you're doing these kinds of things at the last moment, and I checked with even some of the new school board members, they said they weren't advised that you're doing this. I don't think it's fair. And I think the DUAB board needs to know this. That's the kind of thing that turns this community off in the first place with MTT. And they're being true to themselves to the last moment.
I'll say for the 2, we filled 2 positions in curriculum and instruction that have been vacant all year.
So they've been vacant all year. Why at the end of the year do you want to set up for the next year when there's somebody else coming in?
We posted them earlier in the year. We didn't want to pull an administrator out of the building mid-year. We didn't get any viable external candidates. We want those people to have enough of a runway to start the new school year successfully. And I think making those appointments in July would not set up central office or those buildings for success. We do hear the feedback, Dr. Smith, and I think, like I said, we've grappled with it and we felt like this was the least bad option, but I certainly understand what you're saying.
I disagree, and I don't have a vote in this matter, but I disagree with what you've done. The community doesn't like what you're doing, and the community suspect what you're doing. And just want it in the record.
Appreciate that. Senator Brown.
Quick question, if I may. Getting back to the truancy, do you refer any of them to the prosecutor?
Yes, we follow the.
And do they prosecute?
I don't have kind of offhand what happens to those records once they're taken in front of truancy court, but yes, sometimes. Certainly.
Could I share, Senator Brown, that there was a big board, a billboard on each corner, 19th and Harrison, I think, 19th grant, that outlined the courts supposedly working with area schools. It would seem to me, and referring people that you got to go to court to testify. So you ought to have some feedback of what's happening. You know, something is missing in this report.
Regarding your comments on the filling the positions, Representative Smith, I'm certainly appreciate those, but I do think it's a balancing act between, preserving in those positions for an incoming superintendent, but there's also a continuity of operations and planning that has to occur. So I think there's perspectives on each side. So
MDT had to make good in planning in the first place because last year or year before, it was the month before school started that they were talking about writing a vision and a mission statement. Those kinds of things are done in the spring. The school improvement plan has to be made in the spring, and then you implement it in the fall. You don't wait till the fall to start doing that. And I didn't hear any more about it after they had this big publicity thing about we wanting to put into what our vision statement is. Man, I think we operate all these years with our vision and mission statement. The vision and mission statement pretty much stays the same. You change the goals, you change the objectives, you change the strategy, you change the tactics. But you don't change the mission. You don't change the goal. I mean, the mission and the vision. And so I don't think they know how to plan. And I'm not trying to be critical, I'm trying to be helpful. And I've said this over and over again.
appreciate it. Thank you. Dr. Ray, you want to move into the financial update?
Yes, and before we hit the financial update, just a few things to make the board aware of that happened since the last time we met. Theodore Roosevelt High School was placed on the national 11 most endangered sites in the country, which makes it more eligible for landmark funding and potentially a productive use of the building moving forward. We've been working hand in hand with Indiana Landmarks and local alumni groups, but that is it's not positive that a building gets named as one of the most endangered in the country, but at the same time, very positive for the attention it will bring to it. Also, the sale of the Lincoln and Duncan school properties closed week before last. The district was able to get $250,000 for those properties. And as I believe I've told some of you before, very thankful and appreciative of Steel City Academy that purchased it, that they didn't wait the district out until July 1st, and then where they could have bought it for $2. So proud of them being strong community partners and paying a fair market value for the building. We are getting quotes currently for the demolition of Norton Elementary School, as well as once those quotes come in, we're going to get quotes for the demolition of the rest of our remaining buildings. And then finally, we have potential buyers for both the Lou Wallace property and the Webster Elementary property. Very much up until the last day we're here trying to set the district and the new superintendent up where they can worry about what happens in buildings with kids and not having to spend resources and time on vacant buildings, and also trying to improve the neighborhoods those buildings are in.
Very good.
So if we look at the 2024 fund balances, and these are our projections based on closing out of April. If we go to the bottom line, you can see that we'll end the year with a 16.4% net operating surplus and leave the district with a 58.6% operational cash reserve. Some things that have also went into these forecasts will be cost savings on energy that, God willing, the board approves our energy savings contract for LED lighting. We're looking at about $480,000 a year in savings alone for that. That puts the district in really good shape. The board asked us to address post-ESSER budget implications, how we were going to be paying for things that ESSER had been paying for over the last few years. So curriculum, if you recall, when we did fund reconciliation, we left about $4 million in the textbook rental fund, and that will help offset, at least for the next several years, the need to replace and update curriculum. With IT replacements, we have built that into the operations fund, as well as student devices can also be covered by the textbook fund. Professional development, we're gonna have to transition that into the education fund, but also be smart in the ways that we use Title I and Title II, and then also leveraging any external partners. And one of the things that we've also talked about with professional development is partnering with other districts and other schools in the area, because all of our teachers need that, and you could get an economy of scale with that. Teacher raises are being covered in the education fund, and as we've mentioned several times before, in all of our forecasts, we have annual teacher raises built into those forecasts. And then the facilities, the daily operations of facilities and the just general maintenance is going to be covered in the operations fund, but our surpluses, which are leading to operational cash reserves, will only serve to fully seed a rainy day fund. And as we went through, I believe it was a couple meetings ago, we've worked out at least a 10-year plan to be able to fund the annual recurring, deferred, and preventative maintenance that is necessary. Now, if we go to the slide that we always look at, slight changes, but you can see that, very prosperous financial times over the next 5 years. But if enrollment were to flatline, which we're not projecting, but if that would happen, and the referendum were not renewed, the district would be running a deficit in the 29-30 school year. But there are different levers that can be pulled to help address that. But again, it's why, given enrollment and the political climate in a couple of years, the district's going to have to make some tough decisions, or at least be cognizant of those. You can see, if we move on to slide 14, the education fund, again, fairly static month by month, running pretty much on target. Operations also fairly static month to month now. Big costs always coming out of operations are transportation, but utilities, again, hopefully come near the end of the summer with the August and September utility bills coming in, we'll start to see stark drops in those. The debt service fund, no expenditures were made. And then the referendum fund had its monthly transfer as normal.
Dr. Razor?
Yes.
Before you move on the 2024 fund balances,
I'm sorry.
which were on slide 11, I know, I think I've asked this before and I fortunately forgot that the revenues were adjusted from when we first presented this back in January. And then we also had the positive outcome of the ADM count later. Is that factored into the revenue numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. The increased enrollment,
Okay.
as well as the revenue adjustment.
Thank you.
Do we want to transition into the ESSER and 1065 amendments? Or
Any other questions on just the budget update?
I'm sorry.
Question about the major source of funding, which is the ADM. What is your count now, and what is your goal for the fall, and what is your plan to get to that number?
Current count is 4104.
Yes.
4104, and again, that number does not include the early childhood center because those students aren't counted in ADM. We are working to increase enrollment really through grassroots. We're also looking to use some technology that's available to reach people in their homes, similar to that you see now in political races, also reaching directly out to people with enrollment information popping right up on their phone, knowing where our kids live and where neighborhoods that we get students from. So doing some really targeted things where we found that carpet bombing isn't necessarily the most effective way to increase enrollment. It really is through word of mouth, and just getting out and beating the street is the way. The other way too is, I think, honestly, and this is a working theory of mine, I think leaving state control will help with enrollment. I mean, I think that does set some parents' mind of, is this district going to be here 12 years from now when I enroll my kid in kindergarten? Or, what does that mean? It kind of leaves a bad taste, I think, in some folks' mouths. So, the other thing too is coming out of that, we're really trying to hit the things that we do, or we feel we do better than any other districts in the area, and that's STEM education, that's the performing arts, career and technical education, and then the athletic offerings we have and the facilities we have. That's important to a lot of kids and families, and we feel like we can really maximize those things. being the public school district of the city, we do have to be all things to everybody. But at the same time, we want to focus on the things that we think we can really do best, and that's what we can attract families with.
Very good. We have a couple additional slides here, but we can move into the next agenda items if you'd like on the review of the school improvement fund claims docket. Pete?
So board members in the packet, kind of had the 1065 and ESSER things all together. But agenda item number 7 is simply the past transactions. So for the month of April, there was only one line item for flooring for $22,950 spent out of the 1065 fund. So we just look for acknowledgement of that before we move on to the change in spending plans.
Okay. Any questions on the flooring item on the school improvement fund? Hearing that, let's go ahead and move into the,
Before you move on, I asked a question. My question was, what was the count now and what is their projected count they're working toward? I didn't get that.
Our projected count, we're working for. I mean, we want to be hopeful.
I know that it's not, I get it.
Yeah, you know, I think a 5% increase, which would be around 200 kids, is a not unrealistic goal. It's a little bit of a stretch goal, but you know, that, given the fact that was sort of our bump in the fall, we're, you know, the number one goal is don't lose anybody from spring to fall.
Right.
But then also really look on maximizing again what we can do, and you know, and really highlighting a lot of the improvements that this board has approved or that we're going to continue to be doing that, you know, make our buildings attractive, and then the programs again that we offer. But 200-ish students would be a nice solid goal for the fall.
very good. Been advised by Emily that number 7 is an action item, not just a review item. So as far as the approval of the claims docket for the flooring for $22,950, I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised claims docket.
Make motion to approve the revised claim docket as presented.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The docket is approved. We'll move into the review or consideration of the spending plans, both the ESSER and then the 1065 update.
So I'll throw the slide on there, but again, for the board, you got ESSER, which is kind of this white piece of paper, and then the 1065 is the multicolored one we're used to seeing on the second page, has the changes that are being put. You want to go ahead and I'll show the slide.
Sure. As you may know, this is our last chance to amend the ESSER 3 funds, and we wanted to go in, we wanted to look, we wanted to make sure that we, felt comfortable we could spend it all, because we didn't want to send money back and make sure that it was going to worthwhile things. So we went in and reconciled. You can see in the left column, those are the items that we had unused funds or funds that were not going to be used. And then in the right column, you can see how those funds have been reallocated. Science adoption, that's the science materials, are more than most general subject area materials. They're just more manipulatives, more hands-on stuff, things for projects. So the original line item we had, which was based on previous adoptions, wasn't enough, but we were able to allocate money there. Social studies materials, we also needed. The followed inventory services, the districts had some inconsistent inventorying of items, and what Follett will do is they're who own our, they're the vendor of the inventory system we have. They will come in and work with the district and help get you back to ground zero for inventory. We felt that was a very worthwhile activity for the new administration and the new board to have an accurate count of all assets, and especially the things that needed to be tagged, and do that in a uniform way. So we're doing that with them this summer. And then we were also able to take advantage of, again, almost $1 million additional in indirect costs which will further benefit the district and the rainy day fund.
Very good. Any questions for Dr.
I
Razier?
have a question. The science material, did the teachers have any input in it? Because I remember my first year as a science teacher, in a new building. They set my whole room up like it's gonna be a chemistry lab. I had none of the things that I needed in the other areas. Nobody consulted me. Have you consulted?
Yes, we did, this is on the docket, so I'll say it now, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so we convened a committee of science teachers. We had two groups, an elementary and a secondary group. And they reviewed, a smaller group of administrators reviewed the original proposals. We narrowed that down to, actually, we ended up reviewing 5 vendors and had our committee of science teachers come in and see presentations from the vendors, they had about a month to kind of play around with the sample books and sample materials, and they collaborated to submit, their pick, and it was actually unanimous, the one that we picked, which is Sabbath.
You got a big category that's indirect costs. What's that?
Indirect cost is from any federal grant you receive or any grant, you can ask to be reimbursed for the cost of staff administering the grant, because a lot of time is spent on ESSER that, would have been spent in other ways. And that's a way to reimburse the district with the staff time that's been spent.
Would that money be left in the budget come July?
Yes.
Okay. You had your IUN and Purdue cohort. What was that you're not?
So the IUN Purdue cohort, that was money that was not spent for teacher certification. It was just, we've spent money on the IUN Purdue cohort, just that was money that was going to be left over at the end of the year.
Okay. What kind of progress has been made? I know there's teachers coming to my campus, but are they getting their licenses or what?
It's a mixed bag. We have some folks that are doing it. We have other folks that we have to check up on and make sure that they're continuing to do it. Part of their being reimbursed was also getting good grades. And sometimes we have to claw back money when people didn't receive a C in a class or didn't get credit in a class. But we do have teachers being certified.
Have you taken your revised ESSER plan to DOE yet? Or is that what's coming?
Yeah, well, it will go to DOE yet. DOE has looked over it, but it has not been approved by DOE yet. It's kind of a chicken and the egg every time we do this.
And then I have a question, one more question. That Glen Park professional, was that one professional or was that professional? About 71,000.
That would have to be multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know
Yeah.
professional, I get that kind of money.
No.
Representative Smith, Mavis had mentioned that on the science curriculum, that's going to be one of our contractual obligations that we approve later. And in the material, I have the same question, and I think it's like 90 pages that is as a pretty good outline of the review and the engagement from the instructors as far as making that decision and the collaboration that goes into that. So it was a learning experience for me about that as well.
Me as well, I learned a lot about, as a non-science teacher, it's fun to talk about what they like, so.
Any other questions on the ESSER revision? ESSER plan revision? Hearing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion to approve the revised spending plan for ESSER 3?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. ESSER plan is adopted. Next up, we have the 1065 School Improvement Fund.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So with 1065, you're not seeing anything new from the amendment that we made a few months back. What you're seeing now is bids coming in. And some things we overestimated, other things we underestimated. We also had some contingency costs that we did not foresee coming in that came in after the fact. We had reduced our contingency funds, so we had to beef that back up. You see no net change in the amount for this last phase of 1065. We needed to come to you for an amendment now to get some of the contracts that are on the table approved today. We'll likely be coming back to you in June again, once the west side bathroom renovation amount comes in. That may have to become a phased project. if it comes in higher than anticipated, given the fact that now we've pretty much obligated all the funds. But we do still have some worst case scenario money in these projects as well, where we'd like to think that there will be additional that can again be transferred to contingency when these projects are finished.
Very good. I think you answered my question, because I saw a couple of these are also on the contracts to be approved.
Yes.
And so based on those dollar amounts, it looks like we still have some flexibility on those particular line items, but that'll all get reconciled as
Yes.
as we move forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
And obviously, on the ESSER funds, the deadline is this year, else those funds will never get. This is Gary's money on 1065, so if it doesn't happen, you know, it's okay, but we have some extra flexibility how these funds can be used, but, you know, there's some other funding sources we have to get this project.
Yeah, and the district likely in the fall will be coming back to you with needed amendments.
any questions for Dr. Razor on the 1065 school improvement fund plan revision? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the revised 1065 plan? There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. No further comment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The amendment is adopted. The revised plan is adopted. Thank you. Pete, you want to give us an overview on the expenditure authorizations in the last month?
You bet. So you should have 5 stapled letters from me to the district in terms of what I've approved in the last 30 days for Garrett School. So the first 4 of these are all 1065. The first 2 are for digital controls for fire suppression system. One at Glen Park is for $39,350, and one at Bethune was for $45,955 and change. The next 2 were for paving and sidewalks and resurfacing of a parking lot. And first one at Westside Leadership Academy is for $130,000. Next one at Beveridge was for $123,500. And then the last one was for replacing laptops for staff throughout the district. This is going to be an ongoing thing. So instead of every 5 years buying all of your staff, your computers, the idea is just you routinely purchase a fifth of them every 5 years or whatever the replacement schedule is. So this is out of the operations fund, and you will continue to see this intended as an annual expense just to make it more operational as opposed to something that's going to be a larger capital expense down the road. So the total for that was $85,942. And that has been built into the forecast that you saw before in terms of future expenses. So that'll be an ongoing thing out of the operation.
Any questions for Pete on those authorizations? Okay, thank you very much. Move on to contractual obligations, consideration of 5 different contracts.
Okay. I'll put that for-
Yeah.
We're going to do one by one.
Yeah.
Yep,
Do you want me to address them one by one or?
please do.
Okay.
Yes.
On the agenda, the first, Sophia's yours.
So the first one is the Savas science curriculum, and I talked about the process a little bit, that Savas was the unanimous teacher's choice. And we purchased, Dr. Razor spoke to this, we had actually, the last textbook adoption we did was social studies last year, and we had set aside that same amount for science, but in retrospect, science is much more expensive than social studies. There actually aren't even consumables in high school social studies, so it came in a bit higher. We did order some of the hands-on kits, enough for each school to have some to share, so we can do some hands-on work. That was a big request from the staff, so that they wouldn't have to, buy their own materials and everything. And that'll be a 6-year, we're on a 6-year adoption cycle with the district. And this will be the final core subject to adopt for. So now we'll have up-to-date, full sets of materials for all 4 of our core subjects.
But,
Sure.
your presenters, who were trying to get the textbook, business, did they do a correlation between the curriculum that the state requires and their materials?
All of the, all of the curricula that we reviewed that made it past the proposal stage uses the 2023 Indiana standards. So all of the materials based around what's required by the state.
I'm sorry, Mavis, you mentioned this is on a 6-year cycle?
Yes.
Okay, is that the same for all subjects?
Mhm. Yep. So every year then they'll
Yeah.
refresh our consumables and then we'll do a new one every 6 years.
Very good.
How does this fit in with textbook reimbursement from the state? And then this is out of ESSER, then how will that work going forward?
Yeah, so when we did fund reconciliation, we left some money in textbook reimbursement because the amount we get, I believe, back the napkin math works out to be about 600,000, I think. So you can see how that's not enough for something like science adoption. It's pretty close for social studies, English and math are gonna come kind of in the middle. So moving forward, because we've got that extra money there, we should be able to continue that 6-year adoption cycle using just the textbook reimbursement fund for, I think the math we did was 4 or 5 years. And then we'll have to get leaner on curriculum or leverage education fund, to supplement.
But 6 years from now, when science comes up again.
Yeah, but they might not be able to get all the hands-on materials, but the district may be in a very different financial situation in 6 years as well, so.
And because it's ESSER, is there a review process at the Department of Education or not on this?
You mean for the contract or for
Yeah.
the materials?
Yeah, well, I'm curious on both, but,
Yeah, so our federal programs director meets regularly with IDOE to get kind of informal approval before we move it to this body, and then we'll submit it officially.
okay. Very good. Any questions for Mavis on the science curriculum? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve this contractual obligation for the science curriculum?
So moved as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Science curriculum contract is adopted.
Could I just make one observation? If you look at the research, this is a textbook adoption. Curriculum shouldn't be even on a textbook. The curriculum is something separate, the textbooks supplements.
Okay.
So in the future, you may not want to call it science
Okay.
curriculum.
Next, we have contract for McCullough HVAC controls.
Yes.
Razor.
This was one of the projects that allowed us to free up some money for some other things. Came in well less than what we thought it was. We had in our plan $750,000 allocated. We're actually leaving $500,000 right now, which is less, which is quite more than what the bid came in. But all of our bids came in well under our 750, what we thought it would be. But very necessary. We really thought this was going to be our most involved project this summer, so we're happy that where it's coming in, but have left a little back just in case it does prove to be more complex. But it's a building with old controls, and we'll make it much more energy efficient.
Very good.
Matt,
Questions?
How many of our elementary schools are now with air conditioning? That's really.
They all have air conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beverage has univent in the classroom, which is, when you think on all of us probably went to school, it's that one little thing that had the spinning cylinder in it that blows the air, but the rest of them are on normal central air.
And that's good because that's been a reason for dismissing schools in the spring and the fall so many times because the temperature is out there.
Just to add some commentary to that, sometimes people don't realize this, in buildings like school buildings, you either have heat or you have air. It's not like at home where it gets hot in the afternoon and you can switch the furnace off and kick on the air conditioner. We're in that process right now. We try really hard to wait till May 15th because the temperature can drop back down again. So we've had a few warm days in the schools when we've had above average temperatures, but once we make that switch over, the air's on until come late September, so.
What's the contract total being funded by?
Two hundred and
This is
fifty-four.
1065.
Yeah, 1065.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract with Mechanical Concepts for HVAC controls at McCollum.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I was wondering what's the dollar amount? Maybe I was sleeping, but I heard her say it was all below 750,000 in the budget, but
254,550, I think.
Yes,
they say.
yeah, and we left $500,000 in that fund just in case, but we do expect that to be able to be reallocated to other projects.
So there's a total of $500,000, so there's another 240-something thousand that's available.
Yeah,
The next contract is for LED lighting.
this is a project I'm extremely excited about because it will pay for years and years to come. Also, if you've been in a building that wasn't LED lit and then you go into it afterwards, it's a night and day type of experience. Make a better learning environment. Very crisp lights, you don't have the drone and the hum of the old fluorescent lights. The most exciting thing is it's a 1.4-year ROI. 83.5% ROI on this project. So, likely right now it's under $500,000 with utility bills going up as they seem to do every year. It's going to begin saving, $500,000 or more per year. And, what will be interesting too in years to come is to see how behavior changes, because when a building's a little bit better lit, sometimes you aren't using as many lights all the time, so you can get even a kind of a flywheel approach to savings there. And also with the HVAC improvements that we're making, which makes them more energy efficient, really trying to save. I mean, the other thing that's exciting about this is the district saves money without tightening their belt. So that's a real plus as well.
There were quite a few cost quotes here, so this appears to be, I don't want to say system-wide, but virtually all the schools?
Yes, every light.
Okay.
I believe that this company before, they're very good. They understand the schools, they understand the environment that you're trying to work around.
Yeah.
And that's important. They do a lot of work here.
Yeah, they came highly recommended and came in significantly less than the first quote that we had received as well. And I think that just comes to the fact they do understand schools and.
Most of this work will be done in second shift after hours,
Yeah.
which is nice too.
Yeah.
Not all the contractors would be.
Is this a guaranteed energy savings contract?
We had not negotiated it as guaranteed energy savings, but they guaranteed it in their quote, if that makes sense.
The reason I ask is because those guaranteed energy saving contracts have a reporting structure that goes through my agency, so just make sure that they're doing it.
Sure. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shackle.
So 1065 budget, just approved for $854,000 for this line item, and page 2 of this proposal shows 659. So is there something else that's not here?
No, it's 659.
Okay,
That again, we left
just in case.
just in case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. If there aren't any other questions, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve this contract. Amount as presented. Find the exact dollar numbers of that.
That's on page 2, 659.
Yes.
On the back side.
Yeah, the back side of the cover.
That's it.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There we go.
1065.
An amount of $659,358.07.
Got cluttered in all the other graphics on here, right? Usually the price is the thing that sticks out there.
Well, it's advertising.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the LED contract. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Contract is approved. It was
David Holt.
David Holt. Next, we have the print shop equipment for the Career Center.
Yes, this is for the graphic design department that we have in the Career and Technical Center, Gary Area Career Center. These are two industry standard, high frequency, high volume printers, which are what the pros are using right now, and that's what we want our kids to have. You know, we also use similar, we use ESSER funds for welding equipment, we use ESSER funds for equipment in, for actually a forklift simulator. So, you know, it is an allowable expense. Another question that came up too is, well, what if you start making money? That is also allowable through federal funds. They just have to go back into the program. They can't be transferred into the operations fund or that type of thing. I do want to reiterate though, that's not the goal of this. The goal of this is to give our kids the equipment they need to be prepared for the workforce, as well as, again, we do see this as a potential cost saving for the district as we outsource a lot of materials right now for printing that can come in-house, yearbooks even, for example, we can now do in-house on this machine.
We have a very large print shop operation, and that was one of my questions, do you have a class? Because we had about 100 students a year that would go through that, and every single one of them graduated with a job opportunity in facility management position because it's very detailed to learn how to run this equipment.
Yes.
But just caution the school, you are not in the money-making business. If you start making money and you start doing for-profit, having them do things on weekends, you will sell that equipment.
Yeah.
You will get a lot of people asking. We did not do that because we had more work internally than
Yeah.
we could handle.
Please keep it educational.
Yes.
I mean, and
Yeah.
all your schools know this is available, so they're not trying to, you know, run some of those. The cost of per click on this equipment versus what they have in their schools is probably a third.
Yeah, it's,
Run everything you can through. Yes, there's a delay in getting it back out there, but it'll be better quality and cheaper.
but once we get it set up, that would be my intention. I've worked in districts that, similar to you, that sent, you know, if it's gonna be more than 50 copies, it gets sent through the print center and, you know, just drops the,
So you have a print shop director that's also classroom instructor?
yeah, classroom instructor, graphic design teacher,
That's great.
I think there's some instructional materials savings too, because I've noticed a number of things like YouFly as an example, where they'll give you one manual, but everything else has to be printed, right? Or Dibbles, we can pay for them to give us the printed materials, and they say, unless you have a print shop in your district, then sometimes they do it themselves. So I think there's future savings there.
Please make sure you have proper controls of
Yes.
access. You can get quite nefarious with what can come from an outcome of these type of printers.
and and they do come with password and even biometric, so.
So where will consumables come out of the operations fund?
Consumables will come out of the CTE funds.
The CTE
Yeah,
fund?
unless it's being, you know, we can use operations funds if we're doing district materials and those type of things to offset. So we're not gonna use for anything educational, education will spend for it. But if we're doing stuff, you know, printing flyers for graduations or those kind of things, we can run that through operations.
Very good.
I think I asked the question before about running register funded by DOE, so same question here in terms of, before there had been a generic line for Career Center, and now you're coming specifically for this purpose.
Yes, and it will go, it will be, you know, we're asking for your approval, but then we're gonna get DOE approval as well. So we'll wait to proceed.
I don't know if we need to do it pending that or not.
Well, we could add that to a motion if someone wishes to make that motion with that condition. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve this contingent upon ideally approval.
Very good. There's a motion. Is there a second?
That's it.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That contract for the print shop equipment is approved. Last item is the non-teaching staff stipends. We had visited this earlier in the year. And, but it actually comes out in 2 installments. And so I think this is the second
Yes.
of those 2 installments.
Simply the second installment, as you recall, in lieu of a cost of living increase, stipends were provided to all of our teaching staff and then as well as our leadership, professional staff and clerical support staff. You see the amounts with leadership total being $119,000, professional staff $74,000, and clerical and support staff $84,750.
So, and the total is 277, 750, I believe, so,
Yes.
okay.
That's why you don't be there. Good.
Very good. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to approve stipend in the amount of 277.
Very good. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. There are any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. Stipends are adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. That is, yes.
Next up is, Pete, do you want to review our excess education fund transfer responses?
Yeah, so this is something separate from Gary. This is a statutory process. This is only the second year that this body has handled these. We used to have a subcommittee that dealt with this. So for the new members, I'll just give a brief overview. The legislature has created a target of 15%, of which they would like no more than that percentage of education funds transferred to the operations fund. And so DOE will monitor that on a calendar year basis. And then it's really their determination. So we're not going to seek a vote on this. But it statute does say in collaboration, so DUAB in collaboration with DOE will evaluate the responses. So you'd like to talk about it again? I'll give you a few thoughts and just in terms of the content. But any feedback would be informal back to DOE before they reach back out to the schools in terms of whether any escalation would be necessary. So there were actually 9 schools that were either over 15% or could not be determined when notice was sent back in April. The schools have 90 days to respond. So by today, we've had 5 of those 9 respond. We'll have to deal with those other 4 at a future meeting. But of the 5, those that we have received responses for are Griffith Community Schools, Southwest Springs Consolidated Shelby Schools, Goshen Community Schools, Center Grove Community School Corporation, and Union North United School Corporation. So just, you've got the responses in front of you, but just, I'll give a summary of what each of them said back. The first 3 on your list, all 3 of them were dealing with some type of software conversion or software upgrade for their accounting system. And so it's weren't able to provide the numbers initially, and all of them are either at 50% or below. And then Center Grove, they were actually at 15.01%, and their explanation was that they had some Medicaid revenue that was placed in the education fund, went ahead and transferred 15% of that, which of course is what put them over. And so their response is that they've got some protocols in place that won't happen going forward. And then for Union North, what happened there is they transferred 15% routinely when their ADM for their fall count in September of last year went down. No one updated the amount to be transferred, so they went ahead and transferred the same amount all the way through the year. So their percentage was 15.34%. Again, they've instituted some processes, so they will catch that before they do that again. Just the other editorial coming out from Nick before the board, you'll notice that 3 of these 5 schools, they transferred 15%, so that the ceiling is a floor as well. And I'm sure that it's probably fairly typical of all the 290 districts across the state. So, yeah, whether that's good or bad, I just thought I'd note that in terms of how that's typically done, that it's just kind of given that 15% will come right off the top of that education fund to pay for non-classroom things.
I think a generic question
Sure.
from all the application. Representative Thompson can probably answer this as well, but, I don't have the luxury of being, I don't want the luxury of being on the ways and means.
I'd love to have you.
Got my hands filled with banking. Is this a process for all schools, or is it just for those on the watch list?
It is all 290 property tax supported schools.
Okay.
I have a question. So we really don't have data just for Rochester? Is that my understanding?
They've not responded yet. So they have 9 days to respond. They were notified on April 3rd. So we're just taking them as we go.
Okay, and then my next question is, so two mentioned software converting issues. Well, and then the other one, though, the third one told us the name of the program. Do we know what the other programs are? Is this a recurring, do we know? It's a particular software vendor, because that would be,
No, I think one was an upgrade just within the same
okay.
vendor, and the other was going to one company to a different company, a similar type of issue.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I didn't see any need to escalate in terms of the whole purpose is, do they have a plan not to repeat the same thing for 2024? And my recommendation would be, I didn't see anything that they would have trouble doing it. So if you think differently, we can pass it along to DOE.
Anything along those lines? But it is something that DOE monitors and follows up on, so.
School finance.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Very good. Thank you. We've run through our agenda. Is there any other business to come before the board today?
I would request some feedback from DUAB as how you feel about the site, take it back to the community about these promotional feedback at this time of the year.
I'm sorry?
I would like to have some feedback put back to the community about how DUAB feels about the promotions that are being done at the end.
Okay. Well, we confer on that and respond back to you. I need to find out, I would like to learn a little bit more about the process without just spouting what my reaction is, so, but.
Can I just make a comment about that? And I respect your concerns, Representative Smith, but I would have to say, as an outsider, understanding that at least two of the positions have been open for a year. So obviously, we've done a search, we weren't able to find them. The community was aware of those openings, I would presume. Yeah, and so in addition to that, understanding this is a significant transition for the Gary community, and I applaud them on their next steps to resume control of their school, but I would also point out that I can't imagine anything more difficult for a leader coming in who have a gutted C-suite, if you will. And I know that across the board, certainly in my neck of the woods and your great public school systems, it's difficult to find people who are willing to take on these added leadership roles. Being a principal is hard enough, and then you have more responsibilities, and so when you go into administration and everybody's looking for those people. So I would imagine that the people that you have, and it sounds like you've been, in a sense, slow and thoughtful about filling them, understanding the next steps that are coming, but the last thing we want is we don't want to set the next superintendent up for failure, so you know, it sounds like, particularly with your being thoughtful even about scheduling in-teacher training and making sure you're not bumping up against the next superintendents. That's a difficult step. We're at the worst time of the year for schools. You're doing registration, you're hoping to make sure your count is up. Your families don't know who's going to be in charge. And now you also want to make sure that they don't walk into an empty office building, so to speak, with no staff and leadership behind them. So, and even for your teachers. So I want to say thank you. That's a difficult position to be in, and I appreciate your comments today on considering how to strike that.
Well, one follow-up question. How many positions are you filling? Because I know we said you had 2 vacancies. I know 3 people names have been mentioned.
We filled 3 positions at central office.
Any additional ones coming?
Well, to your point, Dr. Smith, there's a chief financial, chief business officer position open. That's one that we are trying to wait out for the superintendent on, because that's in a lot of ways the right hand. And to your point, we don't want to silence somebody that they haven't been able to vet. And we're looking at that one. There are other positions too that we are considering that, positions just start to come open this time of year, as you know, as well. So again, we're trying to be as patient as possible, but at the same time, try to give the superintendent the best chance for success to start the year.
What are these positions? I know they're in curriculum, but what is high?
So two are directly in curriculum, a curriculum and assessment coordinator and a teacher development director. And they'll take on a lot of what I've been doing, as well as the chief academic officer position that's been vacant. And then we've hired a director of at-risk populations, so that someone will have kind of a strategic eye on our alternative programming, how students are moving through the various options we have, very virtual, alternative school, the WBS program at the Career Center. Yeah, so and she'll also have an eye on truancy and just bring a little strategy to those things. The folks who we did an application process, we posted publicly, we had some external applicants, but the strongest candidates were some of our own principals. And those seats will be filled by assistant principals that are currently in those buildings who we've all ready for promotion.
And the at-risk position is in direct correlation with the new laws that have been passed around truancy, and given the fact that we have an acute truancy problem, now to carry out those laws in full force, we needed more hands.
Yeah.
Very good.
We don't anticipate any other central office roles that will pull administrators out of buildings unless somebody leaves or there's another surprise change.
There's no other business. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.